Welcome back to Alberta Primetime. On the Vocal Point tonight, how far can wine in Kelowna really take the Alberta and BC premiers on energy cooperation? And what Quebec has that Alberta needs? The Monday Money panel is in. Jane Alm is a senior investment advisor with Angus Watt Advisory and National Bank Financial. Todd Hirsch is senior economist at ATB Financial. And Shafik Hirani is a senior executive financial advisor at Investors Group Calgary. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Todd, it was Allison and Christy laughing, chatting in the Okanagan. The only chill was in the wine. How far could true cooperation take westward pipelines that Alberta so desperately needs?
Yeah, well, the two provinces, they've got a long way to go at rebuilding some of the cooperation that we need to see. Unfortunately, because of some of those breakdowns in those relationships between Alberta and BC, we're a little bit farther behind than where we'd like to be. Both provinces are, and I think both premiers realize that. So I think this meeting, it was all very kind of surface things. Let's concentrate on the things that we all get along on. I think that's
real issues.
Real issues, yeah. But the two provinces do agree on an awful lot of things. The new Western Partnership and with Saskatchewan, and different things that the two provinces have always agreed on. So I think the two premiers were very smart in sort of, let's focus on this for now. Let's solidify what we've got in common, our starting points.
Not lose any more time.
Right.
Jane, the premiers announced that they are forming a working group to address skills, training, and immigration, as well as labor issues. BC and Alberta share those things. Is that significant? These are the kind of behind-the-scenes things that maybe the public doesn't always realize are pretty crucial.
Well, they're very crucial because we do face some of the same issues in both provinces, and if we can kind of come up with ideas together that will help everybody, you know, more heads are usually better, more ideas free-flowing. That's always a good thing. And you know, both of these ladies have been re-elected into positions, or elected and re-elected. So they now are starting, if you will, on a slate. They've got a number of years to get some things done. If they can, like Todd said, focus on what we've got in common and what we can accomplish without having conflict, then that makes it easier. We have to wait for the federal review on the Northern Gateway, so there's not much there to talk about at this point in time.
That puts it all into perspective, though. I mean, we've got to keep things moving forward despite these arguments, maybe personality conflicts. Shafik, the Alberta government is also unveiling a new regulatory body this week for oil, gas, and coal. It's more streamlined for business permits. How important is that? Because at the same time, it's getting criticism, you know, perhaps the environmental protection under this new regime is going to decrease. Considering the timing with pipelines at stake, how important is it for the Alberta government to get these business and regulatory environmental changes right?
Yeah, it's vital, Jennifer. And it's actually called the Alberta Energy Regulator, and it was put forward today by the old Energy Resource and Conservation Board, or the ERCB. This is vital, but the problem is to get the right framework for regulatory reform in Alberta for oil and gas. It's going to be, it's 10 years out the door. It's 10 years ahead. So they're setting up a framework right now for a long-term sustainable growth. This would have been great if it had been done 5 years ago, but better late than never, for sure.
These things might sound dry, but Todd, they're pretty critical to the economy and how well the province does.
Absolutely. The more streamlined things are and the more certainty business has. And I think that's really what they're trying to do with this, is lay some policy guidelines and some frameworks that the business knows this is not going to change, that there is a process in place. It does open itself, however, up to some criticism. Those who want to criticize will say, well, you're just doing this. It's just all sort of smoke and mirrors. You're doing this to avoid a very strict environmental assessment. Right. I don't see it that way, but it does, you know, it opens itself up to that critique.
Time will tell, and at the same time, of course, business in Alberta churning along. Alberta's biggest businesses are putting the charm on in Quebec most recently. Todd, the Montreal Board of Trade and Alberta Enterprise Group are hosting buyers from TransCanada, Suncor, CNRL in Quebec, and they're there because they say Alberta needs the technology, products, services that Quebec has to offer. Does our relationship with other provinces provinces need stoking?
Absolutely. And in fact, Quebec and Western Canada, in the past, we've tended to sort of focus on how we're all different. But actually, Quebec and business in Quebec and the energy sector in Quebec has a lot in common with Alberta. And there's a lot of partnerships that could form there. They have a huge refining sector in Quebec, and they need Western Canadian oil.
That might surprise a lot of people. Jane, it's not even just oil sands, but also civil engineering, construction supplies, green technology, forestry, transport, water management and treatment, air quality. Quebec has so many things they can offer Alberta in all of those areas. Do you see opportunities for clients or people who want to get in on that? What do you make of it all?
Well, first, the biggest opportunity I see is if we've got coordination and coordination between all the provinces, then that will make our west-east pipeline much more viable because we've got everybody on board. It's also important, I think, that the people in Eastern Canada, Quebec, Ontario understand that the oil that's being produced here in Alberta is really benefiting the entire country. Right. So then when we start looking about from the investment side, we start looking at different companies that might have an impact. You know, the question always becomes valuation. Where are they today? Where they should they be? And how are they positioned? And management, all those things play into it.
Shafik, we mentioned all the other sectors, but of course oil sands the big one. $218 billion in estimated investment in the oil sands over the next 25 years. A pretty huge shopping list. Do you see opportunities for your clients? How do you go about finding them?
You know, that's actually just the important question, Jennifer, because even if you take a look at the pipelines to Quebec, we're looking at a decade out before anything gets into place. And, you know, a lot can change over the next, 10 years. If you're an investor right now, the main idea is how can I invest in some money, and oil and gas is where it's at. But the problem is people tend to think diversification is putting 5 different holdings in 5 different oil and gas companies. And you want to make sure that if you are going to invest in this market, one, you diversify by the sector, the market cap. Are we looking at large companies or small companies? And you protect your principal. Remember, Alberta is a very small part of the world's market cap. So I wouldn't encourage people, while there are opportunities, to put all their eggs in this one little sector. There's a lot of other sectors out there too.
And that's why you guys are the financial advisors. Next up, a big shakeup in the food biz. Jane's emotional about this one. Are your grocery store options about to change? Welcome back to Alberta Primetime in the Monday Money Panel. Todd, we all buy food. Sobeys is making a big play in the Western Canadian market, purchasing Safeway. What might it mean for retailers as well as we consumers?
Well, I guess for consumers, you know, generally the more competition, the better. That's kind of what we like to see as consumers, and that's in fact why they have a competition bureau set up. And we're used to seeing these kinds of big takeovers and things like the oil and gas, billions. But this is the first time for a long, long time that I can remember we're seeing a major takeover in retail grocery. I think that there could be some displacement, especially here in Western Canada. Safeway is a very, very large, has a large presence here. And when Sobeys takes them over, if they keep the Safeway name or not, I think there could be some, you know, maybe questions around competitive forces for consumers.
Jane, food prices in Alberta can often be higher because of the extra shipping, so we might already feel a little hard done by, but is the competition a concern here? And for you, I mean, you like to shop at your Safeway.
I do, but you know, when I look at it, to Todd's point, 85 of the 213 Safeway stores are in Alberta. So the Competition Bureau is going to come in and they're going to go, okay, these areas, like my area has 2 Sobeys and 2 Safeway in very close proximity.
So now you got 4 Sobeys.
You've got 4 stores that have effectively, even if they keep the names the same brands, the same produce, the same owner. So it's, you know, if the Competition Bureau does what they have in the past, basing it on history, they will say that Sobeys has to divest some of those stores. Now, Sobeys is well aware. When they went into this, they were well aware that that could be very much part of the outcome, and I don't think that they will be surprised at all to hear that, you know, something like that could come down. That's months away. We would not expect to hear anything on that front until September. So this, you know, you're not going to see a rebranding of your Safeway probably until at least later in the fall, maybe into the new year.
Shafik, a lot of Albertans might not think that this province is a food retail mecca, but it is pretty big business here.
Yeah, it's huge. It's actually, in terms of income per GDP and the retail expenditures per person, Alberta's #1 in Canada. So we do spend our money, and you'll find people are very brand loyal to Safeway or Co-op or, you know, wherever they shop. So this is a big change. And remember, if you're an Albertan, you want to get an idea of what's going to happen with the level of service you get from where you shop, and every acquiring company that acquires an acquirer, they want to look for ways to cut costs, and cut costs means cut service levels, cut staffing. I'm not a big fan of the move, but what can you do? They report to their shareholders and the boards.
Maybe it's time to start shopping at those little neighborhood boutique butchers and
you might see more of those
delis.
come up. You might see more of that develop.
That might be refreshing, actually.
More farmers markets.
Yes, farmers markets are taking off. Maybe it's just me, and I'm finally noticing them, but they're really getting pretty up there. We like to ask our Monday Money panel every week what else they've got their eye on. So Todd, we'll start with you. You're still focusing on shopping.
Still focusing on those retail sales. Stats Canada is coming up with, or out this week on Friday with the latest retail numbers. To me, that's one of the best indicators. It is past looking, but it's one of the best indicators of confidence and the sort of the state of the economy right now.
What are you expecting Friday?
Still expecting pretty good numbers, especially here in Alberta. I haven't really sensed much of a slowdown. I mean, those numbers bounce up and down, you know, a little bit month to month, but overall, 2013 has still been very strong for retail.
Good to hear. And Jane, what are you watching? Some high-profile, high-level meetings, and why?
Well, we have first off the ministers from the premiers rather from the Western provinces are meeting in Winnipeg, so they're going to be discussing their alliance and how they can get more skilled labor and all those things that Christy Clark and Alison Redford were talking about now across the Western provinces. In addition, we have Federal Reserve Board meeting this week, so all eyes will be attuned in the U.S. to what Mr. Bernanke says and whether there's any clues as to ending the quantitative easing, whether he just sort of slows down on his buying, lets things come off the balance sheet, or just keeps on going. And then the last one.
And that's basically government propping up the U.S. economy.
That's government supporting the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy is starting to stabilize, so I don't like to say that they're propping it up necessarily, but they're there to support. And then, of course, the other big one this week is the G8 and Syria, and all the issues in that country will be high on the topic, and we do know that last week the U.S. said that they would sell arms to the rebels. So
we know what these conflicts can do to our RSP statements.
And our price of oil.
Yeah. Shafik, I know you were watching the U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Ben Bernanke's remarks as well, not just what he might do in terms of quantitative easing, but also interest rates. What are you expecting there?
Yeah, you know, the main question is to take a look at his wording, and he's they're putting a tapering program, so they're reducing a little bit of the amount of money going into the economy. And you're also going to see China and the European Union on Thursday, the day after Ben Bernanke speaks, talk about their inflation rates. And both of those could be pretty negative information to show that growth across the world is slowing down. That plus Syria means that you might have a difficult week next week. And if you're an investor, you want to pay attention to this because you could see commodity prices go up if there's more Syrian tension. So much of what Jane's watching, we really do want to keep our eye on those things.
All right. And just before we leave, it is June, the month of weddings. The season is upon us quickly. Jane, if you're one of those Albertans who's getting lots of invitations for the summer, you've only got so much money. Do you say no? Do you pick a few? How do you manage that financial conundrum?
Well, if you're going and you know a lot of people going, you can combine your funds so that you don't have to put in a lot of money, because if a lot of your group of friends are getting married, likely you're all at them, so it would be good for everyone to kind of combine. The other one is always remember that if it's somebody that's just inviting you because they think they have to, we all get those, you don't have to go. You do have the ability to say no. That's why the RSVP says yes or no.
Good advice. And Todd, just give us a sense of how big the wedding industry maybe is in Alberta. Are we still seeing lots of pretty low-key casual weddings, or have things really picked up there?
Well, I couldn't really quite pinpoint the economic size of it. It would all be sort of in the food and accommodation and also then the retail. But my guess is this is still pretty big business in Alberta. I don't think people are toning down simply because Albertans have a lot of income right now. They're still feeling very confident. Judging by what they're spending on other things in the economy, I think those weddings are going to be every bit as big this year.
Always a romantic time of year. Thank you very much for all your insight. Jane Alm is a senior investment advisor with Angus Watt Advisory and National Bank Financial. Todd Hirsch is senior economist at ATB Financial. And Shafik Hirani, senior executive financial advisor at Investors Group Calgary.